Hello guys and welcome back to another video. This week I'll be showing you how I made this ring. The inner core is titanium, the exterior is made from fumed oak, and the inlays are 2 bands of silver and malachite. I usually use ebony for this type of ring, but I wanted to try something with a much darker colour just to see how it would turn out. I also use titanium wire, but today I've decided that I'm going to use square silver wire just to see if it's easy to work with. First off, we have our titanium stock, which we will machine into a core in just a moment, our fumed oak, powdered malachite, and our square wire. I'll start with 3 cuts of fumed oak veneer, which I'll then drop into a stock pot later for them to soak in hot water. Doing so will make them easy to work with when we start to coil them a little bit later on. I like to take at least 3 pieces just in case one messes up later in the ring making process. While our veneer soaks in the hot water, I'll make a start on the titanium core. Using a carbide lathe tool, I start to flush the end of the titanium stock to make sure the face is flat, ready for boring. This is definitely the most satisfying part of this entire process. Starting off with a spotting drill, I slowly work up with progressively larger drill bits until I can finally get my boring bar in place and increase the inner diameter of the ring. I wasn't overly concerned with the size of this ring, it's not for an order, it's just for demonstration. Now with the boring bar in place, I began to take away enough material until the diameter was a decent size. With the inner diameter of the ring done, I then began to remove material from the outside of the ring to trim it down. Ideally, I'd like the ring to be at least 1.2mm thick, just so I can grind away the inside tool marks just to get it to a perfect 1mm. I brush some layout fluid onto my blank, and then I set my calipers to 8mm, which will be the width of the ring, and then scored that on to the layout fluid so I know where to part the ring off from the rest of the stock. And here we have the titanium ring in its roughest form possible. As you can see, one side is bigger than the other, and that's just because there's a lip that gets left over when you part it from the rest of your work. It's fairly close to the size that I want, so I'm pretty happy with it for the time being. And now, using a Dremel and a sanding drum, I begin to take away the tooling marks on the inside of the titanium core. As you can see, titanium does spark quite a bit, and titanium fires are very difficult to put out. So now we'll check on our wood, and as you can see, it has been completely steamed and it is very pliable. Using a piece of sandpaper to taper down one of the edges of the wood makes the coiling process a lot simpler. I use a socket wrench set to coil my wood around and then stick in place with masking tape and then leave to dry. And now for the trickiest part, to attach the wood to the titanium core. To begin with, I loosely coil the veneer around the core of titanium. Once it's secured in place, I make sure that the coils are tight, and then I use thin CA glue to stabilize the core against the wood Applying thin CA on this part of the ring allows it to sink down to the other side and completely soak and seal the wood against the titanium core itself. I then cut away any excess wood with a pair of scissors and make sure all the layers are lined up correctly and are now ready for gluing in place. Once again, I taper the other end of the wood to make sure that the coil is completely seamless. I glued the last part of the ring in place. The coil is now completely glued to the ring. As you can see, it is quite rough. But now we will sand down the edges, get it flush with the titanium core, and then we'll mount it on the lathe and start some inlays. With the ring now mounted on the mandrel, I can begin to sand from 220 grit up to 1200. Doing this will begin to smooth the surface of the ring over. Using my calipers, I measure the width of the ring and then halve it, then score both sides onto the ring to get the perfect centre point for our malachite inlay. I then use two different types of files as carving tools to put our inlay channels in ready. I use my calipers again to check for consistency. I place a drop of medium CA into the inlay trench and begin to fill it with malachite powder. As you can see, the malachite inlay is now done. It is very rough, so off camera I take the ring to the Dremel and use a drum sander just to smooth down the malachite stone to make it flush with the ring. Well, my camera decided to die when I was doing the inlay for the two silver bands. I'm sorry about that. But as you can see here, they are being inlaid and I'm using a pair of half round pliers just to hold them in place while they're being glued. Before I grind down the two silver bands, I first decided to mount the ring onto the wood lathe and give it a brief polish on the inside using progressively finer grits of sandpaper. Off camera, once again, I ground the two silver bands down flat flush against the wood, and now with progressively finer grits of sandpaper from 220 to 1200, I begin to sand the ring to make sure it's nice and smooth, ready for a CA finish. I apply some linseed oil to the ring to make the natural grain and the colour of the wood stand out. I then start to apply many layers of CA glue, starting with thin CA glue, around about 10 coats, just to fill in all the grains of the wood. Then I switch over to a medium viscosity CA glue to start building the outer barrier. I sand in between to keep the barrier smooth, and I also use accelerator to help the glue dry much faster. Once I'm happy with the amount of layers, I then switch over to micromesh pads and I wet sand the outer shell to make it shine. I also like to apply some burnishing cream after I'm happy with it, just to make it extra shiny. To finish the edges of my rings, I like to burnish them, and to do that I get a piece of vegetable tan leather, I soak it with water and let the leather drink it in. Then I strop the ring either side against the leather, and this causes a burnishing effect and prevents any water or any moisture from seeping into the sides of the rings. Then off camera, I used a rotary tool and polished the inside titanium core using various jewelers' rouges. And this is the final product. I'm so happy how this turned out, and I really did enjoy making this video. I'll be uploading some more videos over the next few weeks, so if you have managed to get this far in, I appreciate it and thank you for watching. A like and a subscribe goes a long way, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.